And hundreds of Syrian rebels are pulling out from their last stronghold in the key city of Homs due to a breakthrough deal with Damascus. After months of tense talks, the Syrian government managed to persuade the insurgents to stand down in exchange for safe passage out of the city. The evacuation is being overseen by the UN and the Red Cross, with scores of civilians also being taken out of the area. Syria's third largest city became a symbol of the anti-government uprising in 2011, and Homs has been devastated by years of fierce battles between rebels and Assad's forces. Following the withdrawal of the last militants, the city will pass under complete government control. Well, let's now discuss these developments with Damascus-based journalist and political commentator Ala Ibrahim. Mr. Ibrahim, thank you so much for joining us here on RT International. So the rebels stress that this pullout is not a surrender, and some of them were even seen leaving the city with their weapons. Why did the Syrian government let them out?
Well, it's a very complicated situation. You have to bear in mind that the city of Homs has been, as you said in the introduction, deemed as the capital of the Syrian revolution, and it has never been fully under government control since the protests broke out against the government of President Bashar al-Assad back in March 2011. So for the Syrian government, this was a chance to end rebel presence in the only district out of the city's 37 districts, that the only district that the insurgents still controlled, which was Al-Wa'ar. And as a result, it agreed to a deal. It's a very large deal that will take 45 days to 60 days to be executed. Only 300 insurgents or rebels would be allowed safe passage to the northern province of Idlib, where they'll be rejoining other forces of al-Nusra Front, the affiliate of Al-Qaeda in Syria. But another 1,000 rebel fighters are expected to turn themselves in to be released automatically later on. And there is also several hundreds who will be joining a pro-government militia in Homs city to protect the city against future militant attacks. So I think for the Syrian government, the prize that made it allow these 300 rebel fighters or insurgents to cross into rebel areas was the price of regaining full control over a city of a great symbolic value such as Homs city.
Right. Well, what is your opinion on how this whole situation might affect the future peace deals between the rebels and Damascus?
We have to bear in mind that this is not the first example where rebel presence in a certain part of the country was ended through negotiations and not through fighting alone. And I think the more examples or successful examples that the Syrian government can offer to Syrian fighters among the ranks of the rebels, it stands a better chance to convince these Syrian fighters to drop their weapons or switch sides and join the Syrian army. As you know, the majority, and not the majority, the effective parts of the rebel forces fighting the government of President Bashar al-Assad are foreign jihadists who are affiliated to radical movements such as ISIL, al-Nusra Front, the affiliate of Al-Qaeda, or Ahrar al-Sham, also an organization with ties to Al-Qaeda. So the Syrian government is always betting on convincing the less radical rebels into switching sides and putting down their weapons, and by allowing such a deal to go through, I think they are sending the message that there is a second chance for those who bear arms against the Syrian government.
Now, we've apparently just witnessed a diplomatic victory for the Syrian government. Do you think Western governments will appreciate these efforts by Damascus?
No, actually they won't, and we shouldn't expect any recognition of what happened in Homs, though it is a very important milestone in the course of the Syrian conflict. Everyone in the Western world are now speaking about a political solution to the Syrian war and to the Syrian crisis, and here it is a miniature of this solution, a scenario where fighters were allowed to leave in safety, a scenario where fighters were allowed to put down arms, and a city returns to its normal pace of life in an agreement and not through fighting. And this is what everyone should be seeking in the Syrian conflict. But for some reason, no one is paying the attention sufficient to such an important milestone. And we didn't call this just a victory for the Syrian army, or for the Syrian government. It's a victory for the residents of the city of Homs. For years now, they have been threatened by shells fired on the government-held areas of the city from Al-Wa'ar district. For years now, they have been threatened by car bombs that were rigged in Al-Wa'ar district and sent into other parts of the city. So this is a victory for the residents of the city of Homs, and as a result, it should gain the attention that it's not getting, unfortunately.